All right, let's dive into one of the most fascinating and maybe one of the most confusing ideas in all of theology, the Christian Trinity. So, Christians believe in one God. Simple enough, but they also talk about a Father, a Son, and a Holy Spirit. That's three, but also one. How does that work? Well, it's a puzzle for sure, and in this explainer, we're going to break down what our source material has to say about it. And that question right there, that's the whole ballgame. How can a single unified God exist as three distinct persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, all at the exact same time? It's a paradox that kind of breaks our everyday logic, and our source material is here to help us unpack the official, orthodox Christian view. Okay, so let's set the stage with that core paradox. Our source defines God as one single being, but three distinct persons, one what and three whos.
Now, because this idea is so complex, it's super easy to get it wrong. Our source points out two major pitfalls that people often fall into when they try to make it simpler than it is.
So on one hand, you have the idea that it's basically three separate gods who just, agree to work together as a team. And on the other hand, you get the idea that it's just one God who's kind of wearing different hats or playing different roles depending on the situation. And according to our source, it's this second idea, the one God, three roles thing, that's a really specific theological error we need to look at closely.
So let's zoom in on that second idea. One God, three different roles. In Orthodox theology, this view actually has a name, and it's considered a heresy. It's called modalism.
So what exactly is modalism? Well, it's the belief that God is one single person who just shows up in different forms, or modes. Kind of like God was in Father mode during creation, then switched to Son mode for our salvation, and now operates in Holy Spirit mode. The key thing here is that in this view, the Father, Son, and Spirit are never all there at the same time.
And here's the classic analogy that people use to explain modalism. Think about a man. At church, he's a pastor. When he gets home, he's a husband. And to his kids, he's a father. He's still one person, right? He's just filling three different roles. Modalism tries to apply that exact same logic to God. It seems simple and neat, but our source says this comparison is actually pretty dangerous, theologically speaking.
So what's the big deal? Why is this view rejected? Well, according to the source, if the Father, Son, and Spirit are just temporary modes, then they aren't real distinct persons. And if they aren't distinct persons, they can't have a real relationship with each other. Jesus couldn't actually pray to the Father if he was the Father in a different costume. It basically erases the whole idea of a multi-personal God and leaves you with just a single being, which isn't the Trinity at all.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about what the Trinity isn't according to this view. So what is it then? Our source now shifts from talking about the heresy to explaining the Orthodox formula.
Here it is, the core of the doctrine in 4 words. One essence, 3 persons. Essence refers to the single divine substance, the what God is. But inside that one what, there are 3 distinct whos, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. 3 co-equal and co-eternal persons who share that one divine essence. And here's something that might surprise you. Our source points out that the word Trinity itself, it's not in the Bible, not once. It's described as a theological term created by humans to neatly summarize all the evidence found in the Scriptures. And just as importantly, it was created to act as a guardrail to protect the doctrine from ideas like modalism.
So this doctrine isn't just pulled out of thin air. The source argues it's built on a whole bunch of testimonies scattered throughout the Bible. You've got moments in Genesis where God refers to himself as us. You have Jesus saying things like, I and the Father are one. And then there are direct commands to baptize in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. All of these together are seen as the biblical foundation for a triune God.
This brings us to a final and absolutely crucial point from our source. When we're trying to wrap our heads around an idea this big, it's so natural to reach for an analogy, right? Something to help us visualize it. But with the Trinity, that's where things can get really tricky.
Let's take a classic example. The sun. It has a core, it gives off light, and it produces heat. 3 things, but one sun. Sounds pretty good, right? But here's the danger our source explains. If you think about it one way, the light and heat are just byproducts of the core, which would make the Son and Spirit somehow less than the Father. That leads to a heresy called Arianism. Or if you think about it another way, they're just different aspects or functions of the Son, which, oops, takes you right back to modalism again. See the problem? So what's the bottom line? Our source is incredibly clear on this. Because pretty much every analogy falls apart if you push it too far, the safest and most accurate way to talk about the Trinity is to just stick to the precise theological language. That formula, one essence and three persons, it isn't meant to be a simple picture. It's meant to be a careful, protective boundary.
And really, this is what it all boils down to. The source presents the Trinity as a divine mystery that, by its very nature, goes beyond human reason. You can't perfectly box it up with an analogy from the world around us. All that careful language isn't there to solve the mystery like a math problem. It's there to preserve it.
And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. If a central belief of a faith is defined as something that just can't be fully explained by our logic or by comparing it to anything in our world, what does that tell us about the relationship between mystery, reason, and what faith really is?